Discuss a lot about what's going on in the political world, but also topics that pertain to everyday life in general. If you are subscribed to my channel, thank you for your support. I appreciate you guys. I always got to let you know that. Don't forget, if you see a video that you like, to hit that thumbs up button for your girl. Leave a comment down below because I want to get your thoughts on what I'm discussing. Share the video. And if you're new to my channel, welcome. You can do all those things. And don't forget to subscribe if you're interested. So I wanted to come on here real quick today, you guys, and discuss some news that happened today. President Trump fired his U.S. Attorney General Pam Bondi today. Now, a lot of people had been waiting for this moment, especially after what happened last year regarding the Epstein situation, which I'm going to share with you guys in a moment. But she reportedly is fired from this position, but she will still be working with the Trump administration on the private sector or in the private sector. So I wanted to get into this a little bit, you guys, because a lot of people had high hopes for her when Trump appointed her for the Attorney General position. If you've been following political news, have been awaiting for a lot of corrupt politicians to be prosecuted. Okay, she did a good job when it came down to busting drug traffickers and things of that nature, but we still have yet to see any accountability for any corrupt politicians with all this fraud that's been found in Minnesota and California. Tim Walz, Ilhan Omar. It's like, okay, we hear about the corruption, but then there's no follow-up with prosecution. So a lot of people grew frustrated of her. But let's look a little bit of what occurred during her confirmation.
Do you believe that the January 6 rioters who've been convicted of violent assaults on police officers should be pardoned?
Before I say anything, you guys, you see how these Democrats always come out. The first thing I hear is him questioning her about January 6th, the rioters threatening police officers. First of all, contrary to the lying liberal media, there were 0 police officers that died that day. There was one person reportedly that died on that day, and her name was Ashley Babbitt, who had served for this country, and she was shot without warning. She wasn't even being a threat to the officers like you have on the left side, that likes to go up and harass officers and stuff and then cry foul when they get handled. But they want to keep this January 6th bogus narrative running, although it has been debunked 1,000 times. 0 police officers killed that day. Only one person, and it was a Trump supporter, that was killed that day, but they don't want to mention her name.
Senator, if confirmed as Attorney General of the United States, the pardons, of course, fall under the president. But if asked to look at those cases, I will look at each case and advise on a case-by-case basis, just as I did my entire career as a prosecutor.
It would not be appropriate for a prosecutor to start with a name and look for a crime. It's a prosecutor's job to start with a crime and look for a name.
You don't say. You don't say. Well, this is exactly what the Democrat Party did when the former corrupt now president was in office. His Department of Justice was weaponized. They were looking at the name and not the crime. I mean, they ran in the media that President Trump committed all these crimes. He's fraudulent. He's an authoritarian dictator or Hitler. He cheats on his taxes. He does all this stuff. But they were targeting specifically his name. Before he was even taken to trial, they had already found him guilty in the public square because of their bought and paid for liberal media. And now these same people claim that the law is supposed to work this way for them, although they didn't follow their own words when it pertained to President Trump and the right.
Correct.
Senator, I think that is the whole problem with the weaponization that we have seen the last 4 years and what's been happening to Donald Trump. They targeted Donald Trump. They went after him, actually starting back in 2016. They targeted his campaign. They have launched countless investigations against him. That will not be the case if I am Attorney General. I will not politicize that office. I will not target people simply because of their political affiliation. Justice will be administered even-handedly throughout this country. Senator, we've got to bring this country back together.
Sure,
we've got to move forward, or we're going to lose our country.
Yeah, I think the concern is that weaponization of the Justice Department may well occur under your tenure, and we want to make sure
As
that
if
that's
it didn't
not.
occur under the Biden administration. These people are such hypocrites, you guys. That's all I can say. And this is further explains how they did it under the Biden administration, how they weaponized the Department of Justice. They were so concerned when Trump was in office that they were going to get what they had given.
3 weeks ago, President Trump named 3 people in that Truth Social post to Attorney General Pam Bondi that he wanted prosecuted. 2 of them have now been indicted. You're not only the Judiciary Chair, you also lead a subcommittee on weaponization of federal government. So will you be looking into this?
Well, look, I think that this Justice Department is applying the facts to the law. I mean, if John Bolton, a federal judge, thought there was probable cause when they searched John Bolton's house, you had mentioned him, that he mishandled classified information and applied the facts to the law. We'll see if they prosecute there. We know with Letitia James, for example, that you can't say it's your secondary residence and then, in fact, make it an investment property. It looks like she did that. They're applying the facts to the law, and there's that investigation. And, of course, we know with Jim Comey that he specifically hired this individual, Daniel Richman, to leak information. He laundered information through Richman, leaked that information out there. The Comey memos, for goodness sake, went through Mr. Richman. And then Comey, when he testifies, says something different. So that's why he's being prosecuted. So this is our Justice Department, under the leadership of the Attorney General, applying the facts to the law like you are supposed to. Not the weaponization of government like we saw under Biden, like we saw under Merrick Garland, like we saw with Chris Wray. So this is, I think, a completely different situation.
Exactly. We saw plenty of it under the former corrupt senile president's administration. Only Republicans were targeted. I didn't see a single Democrat brought to justice during Biden's installation. Okay, and this is more of what along those lines. This is President Trump's White House press secretary.
It is not weaponizing the Department of Justice to demand accountability for those who weaponize the Department of Justice.
Exactly.
And nobody knows what that looks like more than President Trump. We are not going to tolerate gaslighting from anyone in the media or from anyone on the other side who is trying to say that it's the president who is weaponizing the DOJ. It was Joe Biden and his attorney general who weaponized the DOJ. Joe Biden used this sacred American institution to go after his political opponent in the middle of an election year.
Exactly.
And you look at people like Adam Schiff and like James Comey and like Letitia James, who the president is rightfully frustrated. He wants accountability for these corrupt fraudsters who abused their power, who abused their oath of office to target the former president and then candidate for the highest office in the land.
Exactly, you guys. I mean, it was clear as day that the Department of Justice and FBI were weaponized during Joe Biden's installation. Okay, for the first time in history, a president had his home raided, was going in and out of court, not because of crimes, like actual hardcore crimes, okay, but because they were trying to use the media to run this, put it up out there that he's a dictator, he's a criminal. So, and it was during an election year to try to keep him pretty much from becoming reelected, which he ended up becoming reelected in a landslide. Okay, it was clear as day that this man was targeted. No matter how much the media wants to run the narrative that he's a criminal, he's convicted felon, of what? Most people you ask what was his conviction, they can't even tell you, because of the media and the way that it was used to go after him and the Department of Justice and FBI under the corrupt former senile president, who pardoned several of his family members on his way out the door, okay, including his crackhead son, and who also pardoned reportedly 34 out of 37 of the inmates that were on death row. but they were trying to give President Trump life behind some documents. Yeah, clear as day that they weaponized the Department of Justice, you guys. I'm going to go ahead and move along. This is a example of that. Republicans arrested under Biden administration. Look at all these names. Democrats arrested under Trump administration. 0. Okay, and that's the reason why a lot of people were really looking forward to him putting in an attorney general, not to go tit for tat, but to correct a lot of the wrongs that had been done. You had a lot of people being targeted simply because of their affiliation with President Trump. Meanwhile, the same party that was doing the targeting was the ones that were behind a lot of criminal activity. And that's why people were really looking forward to Pam Bondi, giving some justice, not targeting people, but actually rendering justice. Remember how the media got ahead of the story and started running the narrative that Trump, right when they knew he was going to be reelected, that he was going to be coming after his political opponents. He was going to be targeting his political opponents. Pretty much what they had did to him and and their opponents by looking at that list. Now, let's look a little bit of why Pam Bondi, in my opinion, was let go. This is one of the reasons, or at least in the eyes of MAGA, Trump supporters, after she did this interview, that pretty much set her up for failure.
One of the things a lot of people are wondering, because you said last week that you have the Epstein Files on your desk, is when can we see them and what's taking so long to release them?
I do. Jesse, there are well over, this will make you sick, 200 victims. 200. So we have over 250 actually. So we have to make sure that their identity is protected and their personal information. But other than that, I think tomorrow, the personal information of victims. Other than that, I think tomorrow, Jesse, breaking news right now, you're going to see some Epstein information being released by my office.
What kind? Are we going to see who was on the flights? Are we going to see any evidence from what he recorded? Because he had all of his homes wired with recording devices.
Yeah, what you're going to see, hopefully tomorrow, is a lot of flight logs, a lot of names, a lot of information, but it's pretty sick what that man did.
Okay, well.
So that was the pretext of her downfall, because you come out and you say you have all this information on your desk that you're going to be releasing the very next day, and we know that the very next day that did not happen. Okay, they had to scramble and try to release something, and it was just like blank sheets of paper with black lines drew through them. So many people were like, this is an insult to us. You just showing redacted names, redacted files. Like, you can't even see, it was nothing on the paper that was clearly, seen. And so a lot of people, after that was calling for her to be removed, because that was a massive blunder on her part, to even announce that she would release something and then not release it. And so I want to go into Megyn Kelly to further elaborate on that.
Here's why it's causing such a problem, including amongst many people who love Bongino and Patel. Maybe not so much Bondi. Because we've been told over and over and over again that they did have materials. And I'll take you through some of those. Here's Pam Bondi in February of this year talking about Epstein's client list that they now tell us does not exist.
DOJ may be releasing a list of Jeffrey Epstein's clients? Will that really happen?
It's sitting on my desk right now to review. That's been a directive by President Trump. I'm reviewing that. I'm reviewing JFK files, MLK files. That's all in the process of being reviewed because that was done at the directive of the president from all of these agencies.
So have you seen anything that you said, oh my gosh?
Not yet.
She explicitly said the Epstein client list was sitting on her desk.
Right.
And now they explicitly say they have no evidence that he kept a client list. Okay, so that's one. Then she brought a bunch of conservative influencers to the White House, and I'm told this was a Pam Bondi operation that didn't have like the the blessing of the FBI or necessarily the White House staff either. She brought them to the White House, gave them binders that said it was like the Epstein Files, and they all were embarrassed because it turned out that there was no more than, I think, 200 documents of materials that were already public, which in these influencers' defense, they did not know. They were trusting the Attorney General.
And why do we need to get a photo out of some files? Okay, why these people are playing in our faces. Why do we need to see people holding up some binders with Epstein file on the outside of the binder? We want to see the people that were actually on the list and were actually involved prosecuted. That's what we want to see. Not somebody holding up a binder for a photo op.
Of the United States who, for some reason, thought it would be a good idea to humiliate some of President Trump's most ardent supporters and people who helped get him elected,
while doing it.
For which she hasn't been forgiven by a lot of these folks. I know many of them. Then she came out a little later in February and said on Hannity the following, SOT 8.
You're looking at these documents going, these aren't all the Epstein files. You know, there were flight logs, there were names and victims' names. And we're going, where's the rest of the stuff? And that's what the FBI had turned over to us. And so a source said, whoa, all this evidence is sitting in the Southern District of New York.
Yeah.
So based on that, I gave them the deadline, Friday at 8, a truckload of evidence arrived. It's now in the possession of the FBI. Cash is going to get me and himself, really, a detailed report as to why all these documents and evidence had been withheld. And, you know, we're going to go through it as fast as we can, but go through it very cautiously to protect all the victims of Epstein.
So that's her blaming the FBI. There were additional files. I didn't mean to embarrass the influencers. It's the FBI's fault, but I'm going to get them.
Yeah, and all along you said you had the files on your desk and that it was some horrific things that the man had done. So yeah, it wasn't a good look, you guys. You gotta dot your I's and cross your T's. As an attorney general, you would think that she would have known better than to do that. That was a very amateur move on her part, and it had many people saying that she wasn't fit for that position. Okay, and not only that, but she was doing a lot of news media interviews, and people were like, why are you on Fox News every other day? We don't need to see you giving interviews. We want to see you prosecuting people. That's what you're in position for, to get some justice for us. At any rate, let's go here and look at what an everyday person had to say about this situation with her being fired.
Pam Bondi just got fired, and I'm going to tell you why I could not be happier. Number one, the E-Files, everything that was revealed, everything that was uncovered, and zero prosecutions.
Zero.
I mean, for individuals that were talking such a big game, we're going to be outing all these people, we're going to be holding them accountable, and we've still been waiting for over a year, and nothing has changed. Secondly, it goes to show that Trump has no bias even towards his own administration. Because at the end of the day, he understands this simple reality. We were elected to put Americans first. We were elected not just to make promises, but to keep promises. And if you are not doing the job that you were selected to do, then what are you doing there in the first place?
Exactly.
Keep in mind that Pam Bondi has been one of his most loyal allies. But at the end of the day, we got a job to do. I personally believe that this should not have taken this long for this decision to have been made. This could have been done towards the middle of last year. This could have been done in January. But hey, who do you think the next attorney general is going to be? Pam?
We don't know who the next one is going to be, but we know for sure it won't be her. And yeah, I agree with him. It shouldn't have taken this long. She should have been out the door pretty much after that Epstein debacle, situation, because that was a very bad move on her part. It opened up the door for the Democrats to come in and try to use it against Trump, even though when they were in office, they didn't even make mention of Epstein. But not only just that, because that's irrelevant what they think, it's just the fact that 1 minute you got them on your desk, you're going to release it, then you don't. Then the next minute we're being told there's no clients list. And then when people become outraged, then all of a sudden there is some information about it. And then they started releasing stuff. So it was like they were literally playing in our face. But back to Megyn Kelly, she was the first person to call months ago that Pam Bundy's days as Attorney General were going to be numbered after that Epstein epic failure.
What kind of an attorney general would pretend she's giving new information to some of the president's most loyal advocates in the press, buying ink by the barrel. So either Pam Bondi knew she was about to embarrass some of his most loyal surrogates out there and did that willingly, or she didn't take the time to make sure what was in those binders. She was too lazy to actually figure out none of this is new. And yet she called a meeting with the influencers that included Kash Patel, the head of the FBI, and the sitting vice president. So she's either lazy and incompetent, or she willingly humiliated some of the president's most loyal supporters. Neither one of those is good, and that's why I'm sorry, but I'm going to predict her days are numbered as a member of the Trump administration. What kind of attorney?
She got her days are numbered part right as far as her being the attorney general, but reportedly she will be moving into the private sector to still work on behalf of the Trump administration. But yeah, it was bad all around for her. That was the beginning of the end for her as the attorney general, in my opinion. And people are still waiting for arrest. We are still looking for politicians, people that are in high positions, to be held accountable for all of the many crimes that have been committed. So whoever is next, hopefully they will step up to the plate, because this country will not be made great again, in my opinion, if there is no accountability for all of the corruption. If you can go overseas and arrest a Venezuelan president, you should be able to arrest some corrupt politicians here at home. That's just my opinion, you guys. Let me know yours in the comment section, and I'll see you later.